Hi guys, I hope this video found you well. My name is Isabel, but everyone calls me Izzy, and this is my first video. I thought it would be a good idea for my first video to do something like this because it kind of introduces you guys to the kind of books I like. This is going to be my 2023 book tag video. I'm using the same questions that Destiny Sidwell put in her 2023 book tag, so those are the questions I'm going to be using. Just a disclaimer that 2023 was the year that I really started getting back into reading again. Obviously, I've been a reader my whole life, and so some of these books I've already read before 2023, so I just wanted to give a disclaimer that most of these I started reading in 2023, but some of them I discovered before this year. I might include them in this video because this is my first video, and these are the books that really got me into reading and made me want to start this channel in the first place. So let's just get started. So the first book category is the most disappointing book of this year. And for me, that's going to be The Secret History. I know this is a very controversial topic. A lot of people said that this was an amazing book, and a lot of people loved this book, and I just did not like this book. I did annotate it because there are some parts that were I felt like I should, because there were some parts of the book that I did like, but I thought it was just very boring and very long for no reason. And it's just I was so excited to read this book because everyone was hyping it up and saying it was such a good book, and I ended up really not liking it, and I felt like I wasted so much time reading this book. The characters are so unlikable. I don't think there was a single character in this book that I enjoyed reading. So that's my most disappointing book. I'm very sorry to those of you who did enjoy reading this, but I unfortunately did not. Alright, so the next category is an underdog book, which I think that means an underhyped book. And for me, that's going to be The Maid by Nita Prose. I have not seen this on TikTok, or I don't think I've seen anyone on YouTube read this out of the people that I watch. This is just a really great thriller murder mystery book, and the writing in it's more advanced writing, but it's easy enough that I can understand and that I'm sure most of you can understand. I don't know if it's just me, but that makes me feel smart, and I love reading books that make me feel smart and make me feel like an advanced reader. And so this was just one of those. The characters are so likable, and I felt really connected to them throughout the story, even though it's a pretty short book. I didn't really think about it's a very short book, but I was so connected to it, and I had so much fun reading it. So the next category we have is an overhyped book, and I know this is also going to be very controversial of me to say, but I think that If He Had Been With Me by Lauren Allen is such an overhyped book. It was just very expected, the ending was so expected, and I didn't feel very connected to the characters. It felt like such a young book, and I think this is probably a YA book, so it's probably supposed to feel like that, but to me it was just I could not connect with any of the characters. I didn't relate to them. It was just really boring to me and frustrating to get through. The ending, I was really, that's all? And I just watched a video where the person who finished reading it had the same exact reaction as me. I'm so grateful I'm not the only one that thinks that way about this book, but I wanted so hard to like this book, and I just did not like this book, and I think it's very overhyped. Alright, so the next book category is a book that surprised you, and for this category I have two books. So the first one I have is The Secret Life of Bees by Sue Monk Kidd. I think that's how you say it. This is more of a classic book. It's set in South Carolina in 1964, and it's basically about how this black family of women, I think it's only women, have this house where they are beekeepers. This girl, Lily, is living with an abusive father, and she wants to meet her mother, so she runs away. If I'm remembering this correctly, she runs away and she goes to this house with all these black women, and they become her new family. And I just think this was such a lovely book. The characters, I loved the characters. If you're looking for a classic book that would be more dramatic and more things happening, this is definitely a good book to start with. I absolutely loved this book. I remember this is actually my mom's copy. I remember seeing it on my mom's shelf, and I was like, that seems like a good book to read, and I finally read it, and I absolutely loved it. The next book we have is The Things We Leave Unfinished by Rebecca Yarros. I know she's so popular for writing fantasy books, but me personally, I'm not much of a fantasy person, and this is a historical fiction which I absolutely love historical fiction. Her writing in this book is so good, and this, like, the setting in this book, it's just so good, and the way she writes the characters, I felt so connected to the characters, and the ending had me flabbergasted. This is an amazing historical fiction with a subplot of romance. But yeah, this book was really good, and I highly recommend it to any of you who like historical fiction. So the next category we have is favorite book couples. And for this, I chose Every Summer After by Carly Fortune. This book is basically just like The Summer I Turned Pretty, but I honestly think it was really good, if not better than The Summer I Turned Pretty. I don't really actually remember a lot of it, even though I thought it was really good. This is something I will probably end up rereading in the future. I definitely recommend this book to you if you like The Summer I Turned Pretty, because this is a great book. And then for the second book that I chose for this category is my all-time favorite series ever, Magnolia Parks by Jessa Hastings. The couples Magnolia Parks and BJ Ballantyne. I love these book characters. I feel so connected to them. I chose this book for several categories, which might be a little repetitive, but I just love this book so much. They're very toxic. This is the whole premise of this series, is a bunch of high-class toxic couples, and they're all friends, so they're all connected. Daisy Hates is the second book in this series, but the same characters in this book are in that book, so it's all connected. But I just absolutely love the characters in this book and their relationships, and it's so human and so real. Even though they're from a higher class, there are parts of it that even I can relate to. It's just like the relationships are so real to me. And the next category I have is favorite main characters, and for that I chose The Summer I Turned Pretty. This book, all of the characters, I loved them. I felt so connected to the moms in this book. The relationships between the main character Belly and the two boys, Jonah, I think, and Christian, are so, it's just so cute. The banter in this is so good. I love the characters in this book, and it was so good. I read, I think, this book and the second book all in one day, because these books are so good and they're so cute, and I love the characters in this book. I did choose another book for this category, which is Normal People by Sally Rooney. I absolutely love this book. This is one I want to reread for next year and annotate, because the quotes in this book are so good and the characters are so real. The characters are frustrating at times and like very unlikable, but at the same time they're so human, and the situationships and relationships are so real, and that's what makes me like them so much, because I can completely relate to them. So I absolutely love the characters in this book. Okay, so next we have new favorite author discovered this year. So I have two for this. First is Stephen King. I have known about Stephen King forever, but I've never read one of his books up until this year. So I included him just because I've never read one of his books until this year, even though I've known about him. I absolutely love his books. I have a whole area on my shelf dedicated to the books that I own of his, because I absolutely love his books. The other person I chose for this category, which I don't think also really counts because I've only read this book by Kristen Hanna, but I also own a couple more of her books. I own The Nightingale and The Four Winds, and I know for sure I'm going to like those books. So I felt like I should include her because I absolutely love this book, and I know I'll like her other books, and I discovered her this year. The next category is the happiest book that I read this year, and for that I chose The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Obviously, there are parts of this book that are not very happy, but this is the book that made me the happiest and made me the giddiest, and I just absolutely love this book. The way that she portrays the LGBT community is so real. The way she describes the relationships between these people is just so true, and I just think it's so good. This is by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and I really want to read more of her books because her writing is just phenomenal. Alright, so the next book category is the most frustrating, and for this category I chose The Deal, or the Off-Campus series by Elle Kennedy, because I just really wanted to get over with this series. Like, I sped through it. I just wanted to finish it because I felt like the relationships were mostly based off of sexual encounters, and I think that's kind of weird. She tries like so hard to say that the relationships are not based off of sexual encounters when that's really how it is. And the smut in this book is really good. Like, don't get me wrong, I do really like it, but it was mainly that and not like the romantic side of the relationships, and I just thought that's kind of weird and I don't really like that in my books, so that's why I chose this for the most frustrating. So the next category is the longest book I read this year, and for that we have The Shining by Stephen King, which I mentioned earlier. This book has 659 pages, and the pages are like Bible thin. Like, they are very thin. Like, this doesn't look like a very big book, but when it comes down to it, it's a long book. But I loved this book. There were a couple boring parts of this book, but I still really loved it, and I stayed entertained by it throughout the whole thing. And then we have the shortest book that I read this year, so I have two of these because one of them is Of Mice and Men, which was 112 pages, but I read that in school, so I didn't know if that would really count. But I did love that book. Absolutely an amazing book, and everyone should read it. The shortest book that I read from my own choosing was The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, or however you say that. That book was very good. It was 167 pages, and it was a very adventurous story, and I really liked it, even though it was a bit of a higher reading level. It was more of an advanced classic book, but I really did enjoy reading it anyways. The next category is my favorite book covers of this year, and for that I'd have to say the Magnolia Park series. She just dropped new book covers, and I know people don't really like them, but I think they're very cute in my opinion. And also another honorable mention is the new covers for the Off-Campus series, which I mentioned earlier. I really hate these covers, and she finally came out with new ones, and I feel kind of stupid that I bought these because now there's better ones. I'll try to put a picture of the ones on here, the new ones. I think they're so cute, and they definitely give more of the vibes of the series than these ones do, I think. So the next book category is ones that I haven't stopped thinking about, and for that I'm going to choose Magnolia Parks because I just felt so connected to this book. This series is so good. Like, the characters, I love the characters, I love the relationships, I love the drama. I've not stopped thinking about it, and I won't stop thinking about it. We get a new book in February, Magnolia Parks Into the Dark. I'm actually rereading this right now and annotating as I read. I'm only a couple pages in. Yeah, this is a book that I haven't stopped thinking about, and I don't think I will stop thinking about. So next, I have the cringiest read of the year, and I have a few for this category. First, I have The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. I just thought this book was really cheesy. There were too many lessons going on in this book, and I feel like this would be good for a younger middle schooler. I just think that there were too many morals going on, too many lessons, and I just personally didn't like it very much. I did like the characters, but I just thought it was really cheesy. Next, I have 1,000 Boy Kisses by Tilly Cole. This has got to be the worst out of the three of them. I went on TikTok looking for the saddest books I could find because I love reading sad books, and this popped up as one of them. And yes, it was sad, but the romance in this book is really icky and really cheesy, and I did not like it at all. It's about Rune and Poppy, and they are younger teenagers in love. Rune ends up moving away, and then he comes back. It's not on the back of the cover, so I'm not going to say it. Something's going on in Poppy's life. It is sad, but I just think the romance in this book between Poppy and Rune is just so gross, and the things they called each other was really cringy. It was just not for me. It was very YA. This would be good for middle schoolers. I don't think anyone above that. Alright, and then the last book in this category is Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter. This book wasn't, now that I think about it, it's not that cheesy. I just think I'm learning that I'm not very much of a romance type. It's just really cheesy for me. These romance books are not for me. I just can't. I need a little drama. I need something that's not just lovey-dovey all the way. Next, we have an unpopular book that I loved, and for this I chose The Institute by Stephen King. I have not seen it very much on TikTok. I know that Haley Pham read it, and she said she did not like it that much. I absolutely loved this book. There was a couple boring parts, but I still really liked it all the way through. So I definitely recommend, if you want to get into reading Stephen King, this is a great place to start because the plot is really good. I think it's kind of a fantasy book, and I don't usually like fantasy, but this was really good. So I highly recommend, if you want to get into reading Stephen King books, to read this one first. Next, we have the lowest and highest rated books that I read this year. So the lowest rated book that I read this year was Layla by Colleen Hoover, and my highest rated was Magnolia Parks by Jessa Hastings. But Layla by Colleen Hoover is generally the worst book I've ever read. It was so weird. The concept was weird. It was just really kind of gross, in my opinion, and I do not recommend reading that book, let alone any book by Colleen Hoover. Obviously, I agree with my ratings. I don't like Colleen Hoover. I love Magnolia Parks. So the next category is my favorite book quotes, and for this, I have one from Magnolia Parks. This one says, "How many loves do you get in a lifetime? How many people do you get to call yours? There are all sorts of loves in this world. Not all of them, but most of them are beautiful. Some are old, some noble, some brave. Others are dishonorable and weak and make you so by association. Some are a low whisper on a somber night. Some are maddening. Some you can't ignore. They slow burn inside you, never quite going out completely, but you're too scared to dare to try to fan that flame. Some loves you pretend you don't feel, even when you can, even when you know you do, even if he's the first thing you think of in the morning, even if he's like a match in the darkened room of your heart, because loving something how you love him is a painful love that puts rocks in your pockets and melancholy in your eyeballs. And if time has taught you anything, it's that it doesn't matter. You'll love him forever anyway." Oh, it's so beautiful. It's just so good. And if you have read Magnolia Parks and the series, you'll understand. I cannot recommend this book enough. And then another quote we have is the famous, "We accept the love we think we deserve," from The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky. This book is so heartbreaking. It's just so good. I recommend this to every high schooler, every teenager. This book is amazing, and anyone can relate to this book, I'm sure. I feel like everyone needs to read this to be able to have empathy and understand others and their situations, and this is just an amazing book, and I love that quote. Alright, so the next category I have is a book with the most unique concept, and for that I have The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston. This book is a romance between someone who is alive and can see ghosts and a ghost. And I did not think I was going to like this book. I went into it thinking it was kind of cheesy, and then I got through it and I was like, wow, that was like actually really good, and the concept is so unique, and I actually really love this book. So if you like a good, short, cute, unique romance, this is a great book to start with. Alright, so the next category I have is books that I want to reread next year. And for this, I'm already rereading Magnolia Parks, but I would like to reread the whole series before February and get them annotated. So when the next book comes out in February, I can have a complete annotated series. I would also like to reread A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. This is a brick of a book, and it is really sad, really painful. I tried to annotate it once a long time ago, the first time I read this book, and I stopped very soon in because it's a huge book and there's a lot to unpack, but I would like to reread it and actually annotate it. I also would like to reread Normal People by Sally Rooney that I mentioned earlier. I just really want to underline and highlight all of the quotes that I love and the parts of the book that I love, since I love that book so much. I also would like to read Bones et al. By Camille DeAngelis. They made a movie about this book and it was absolutely wonderful, and so I read the book and the book was even better. So next, I'm going to reflect on my reading goal for this year, which was to read 80 books, and unfortunately, I did not reach that goal. I read 73 books this year. I'm pretty bummed out about it, but I tried really hard. I just couldn't get there, unfortunately. There was a part of the summer where I did not read as much, so I think that's why my goal is not where it should be, where my reading should be. So I'm feeling pretty bummed out about it. Now I'll talk about my goals for next year. So I'm gonna bump that goal down to 50 books because I know that's something I can reach. I also have some other goals. I want to read The Stand by Stephen King. My mom got me a special edition uncut version of The Stand, and I would like to read that this year. I also would like to listen to an audiobook. I started listening to audiobooks this year. I've always been an audiobook hater. Then I listened to Little Fires Everywhere, and I actually could pay attention to it. I would really like to start listening to audiobooks more. I'm going to prioritize reading The Stand because my mom wants to watch the movie with me, and it's a huge book, and if I read it, I would feel so accomplished. If I don't end up liking The Stand, I would like to read It by Stephen King. It's huge. So if I don't end up liking The Stand, I guess I have this instead. We'll see what happens. Alright guys, so thank you so much for watching. That was my 2023 book tag. I hope you enjoyed all of the books, or you found something that you might want to read, and I hope that my recommendations were helpful for you. If you did enjoy this video, feel free to subscribe. I am a new YouTuber, and my dream has always been to be a YouTuber since I was a kid, so I would absolutely love if you could help me. I've always wanted to do this, and I'm finally pursuing my dream. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you guys have a good rest of your day. Bye!